who have not just heard these questions, but they've answered the questions, and their answer to the question is evidenced by their engagement with theory in their research so far. So they're likely to ask you a question on your theoretical foundation if you get into an intellectual conversation with them when you meet them at the conference or at an event. So yay, today we would have them introduce themselves first, and then they respond to a series of questions which we already prepared beforehand. And then we'll give like 15 minutes for an interactive question and answer session where you could ask questions based on whatever they've said, or ask questions which you brought with you which you brought alongside you for this session today. And so as they discuss the different insights, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I would be monitoring the chat, and May should also be doing that. And the panelists also will be looking at that. If you want to direct your question to a specific panelist, or if you are showing it open, just let us know. And as a reminder, please ensure your audio is muted until it's time for the interactive question and answer so that we can minimize noise interference. So without wasting any more time, I'll hand us over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Yeah, that's me, Deborah Miyake. Yeah, I'll hand it over to our panelists now to introduce themselves.
I can go first. Howdy, everyone. I'm Ifeoluwa, and I am a fourth-year graduate student of chemical engineering, and my research is in engineering education. My research is in developing experiential learning in chemical engineering courses. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, okay.
I can go next. Hey everyone, I'm Nivi. I'm a fourth-year PhD student candidate at Florida International University, and in computer engineering and computing education. And my dissertation work looks at how caste-based inequities are being perpetuated, upkept within the US STEM education structures. And I will pass it down to Kevin.
Thank you, Nivi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Kaufman Ortiz. I'm a fourth year PhD candidate at Purdue University. I'm doing my PhD in engineering education, and my dissertation research focuses on acculturation and colonial migration of people that are from the US territories that move to the mainland United States or contiguous United States for work. And I will pass it on to Olivia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia. I'm a third-year PhD candidate at Virginia Tech in engineering education, and my research focuses on curriculum barriers in engineering related to math. And I'll pass it to Marcus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus Melodilita. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in The Ohio State University Engineering Education Department here. My research focus on early career engineering faculty and how they develop their teaching and their motivation to seek education development. And I'll pass to my friend Duncan.
Thanks, Marcus. Like he said, my name's Duncan Mullins. I am a fourth-year PhD candidate at the University at Buffalo in New York. And my research focuses on the other side of Marcus's. I look at graduate students seeking to be faculty and how they consider learning and teaching and the process of becoming faculty members.
Thank you, everyone. I also wanted to highlight that this meeting, our panel discussion, is also being recorded so that everyone is aware. So yeah, Deborah, you can get us started with the questions, and I can move on. And I would also have the questions on the screen so that you guys could talk and see. And we have tried to put together some probing questions as well, or some probing prompts, I would say, just to help you guide and talk through the questions as we go through and move on to this discussion.
Thank you, Animesh. So for the question, I'll ask the question. Feel free to jump in, no particular order. I wouldn't be directing the question to anyone. I'm just going to throw it open for everyone to show in their ideas or thoughts about it as applicable. So the first question we'd like to ask is, how did you go about choosing or building your theoretical framework? When you start graduate school, especially, you most likely are not thinking of theories. You're just thinking of the nice idea you want to do, you want to work on, or a project you're working on. So how did you go about choosing the theoretical framework for your dissertation study or specific projects you're working on? How did you go about choosing and building that up? So yeah, the floor is open.
I want to go first partially. So I'm going to share the two main papers, like the references into the chat for my theory. So once I do that, then I can talk, but if anyone else wants to talk another time. I'm gonna do that just so people have a visual reference as to what I'm talking about.
I can share a little bit by the time Kevin pastes the text into the chat. So for me, like I said, my topic is very new within engineering education conversation, particularly in the US, like thinking about caste and critically looking at it, right? And I was very new to academia, US academia, when I started in fall 2021. So what I did was I just read a lot. I read a lot, academic as well as fictions, and out of engineering, out of STEM education, because a lot of the text existed out of STEM education for me with this particular topic. So I just read widely and a lot more, and then I would just like go to like conferences, meetups, Instagram live things where like scholars and activists were talking about caste equity in the US. So, and then I would like hear them like name dropping some like authors and scholars, then I would go read them, right? Like, so then I came across this critical caste theory. So then I started looking for texts on it. I started looking for scholars who were coming under that bigger umbrella, and then I just read it. So that was one. But I just needed some other framework to bring to ground my study within the US. Like particularly, I was very interested in how dominant caste folks are upkeeping casteism in the US. So then my professor had recently won a career award like last year. And then so I was reading this book with him called Racism Without Racist by Bonilla Silva, which talks about colorblind racism. And that is something he was adopting for that research work, that project work. And then when I was reading it, it started clicking for me. Oh, this is very similar to the things that I want to be thinking about caste. And I started thinking about like, what are the scholars currently thinking about? And then, so they were talking about this phenomenon called castelessness. What does castelessness mean? Meaning that like dominant caste people pretend to think that like, oh, caste doesn't exist once they arrive in the US, which is very similar to color blindness that Bonilla Silva was talking about. So then like, all those framings just clicked together. So I brought together CCT, critical caste theory, and then colorblind racism together to ground my dissertation work in. So I would say like for me, it is a very, very unique journey for me because the topic caste itself is very new in engineering education, and I am trying to like bring all these things into work. So I had to read a lot. I had to put in a lot of these work and trying out a lot of these ideas, right? Like it was just like write an AERA proposal, go and talk to a bunch of people, let's see what they say about, and then they would give me some references, read this book, read this author. And then that kept me driving, and that helped me conceptualize and ground my study in. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to ask me any follow-ups as you see. Over to Kevin.
Really cool that you're paving the way towards studying caste in the United States. So really cool. I'd say similar to you, I'm also paving the way for a kind of a new area. I want to say new area of study in engineering education. It's an area of study that's known in other fields. And I like to call myself a migration scholar currently. Because in engineering education, the word migration has taken a different tone in the past, and it typically means moving between majors. Like someone from civil engineering said, "Oh, I want to study mechanical engineering," right? That's the kind of migration that's currently talked about. But in my case, I am more interested in the movement of people. And I landed on this, I want to say in my second year of PhD. At first, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just kind of knew that, oh, I'm from Puerto Rico, and I know that there's like this thing where people feel like they have to leave Puerto Rico so that they can pursue engineering. So let me start there. And I found this original theory called transnational migration theory when I was designing a independent study. So like I was making up a class for myself, and I found this paper because I'm like, oh, let me just put the keyword Puerto Rico and migration and work, right, and see what comes up. And transnational migration theory is like a theory that kind of puts together some of my interests. And the problem with transnational migration theory is that it didn't help me explain the part of migration that I wanted to understand, which was the part like why do people move? Why do they want to pursue motivations that are going to involve certain sacrifices? And how big are these motivations towards those sacrifices? And it comes into decision making as well. And that's when I had to move away from transnational migration theory to then say, what does Upegui Hernandez cite that I could use? And that's when I landed on Barry. And Barry talks about immigration, acculturation, and adaptation. And I'm like, okay, this is a bit closer to what I'm trying to look for. And I wanted to understand the experience of leaving a US territory and the experience of persisting in the US territory, in the mainland, I'm going to say mainland United States, but we move away from that when we're talking about the US territories and we say contiguous United States. And that's when I landed on Barry. And then after Barry, I tell my advisor, like, hey, I kind of want to understand why people are even inherently motivated to do these things. Like, why would someone choose to do engineering when they know they have to give everything up about their heritage in like the context of the US territories? And she's like, oh, just cite Oyserman and talk about identity-based motivation. And that's how I landed on identity-based motivation. There was no deeper meaning as to why I chose identity-based motivation at first, but then I started reading about it, and it made the most sense to understand the things that I was specifically interested. So yeah, so it's like really new in engineering education, so I had to read a lot of history about the US territories specifically and the colonial context in which they sit. And I have to emphasize that I'm not doing decolonial work because a lot of people use that term in engineering education. I can't claim that I'm doing decolonial work because it's inherently different what I'm doing. But yeah.
Thank
I'll
you
pass it on
so
to whoever's
much.
ready.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, I think key things I picked out from panelists so far is reading a lot, reading a lot. And Kevin mentioned how we just did a random search of Puerto Rico and the second keyword, and he found the theory. And also, in looking for the theory, there was like personal beliefs driving this engagement with theory, trying to understand what actually fits into your existing beliefs rather than just trying to find a framework to put in anything. So like just, I want to fit myself into the framework. So that's interesting to know. Do we have anyone that wants to share something else on this before we move to the next question?
I want to briefly share. So I look explicitly at engineering graduate students who are intending a faculty role after graduation, pursuing that. So many of us would fall into that category, but I still had to go outside engineering and engineering education to look and find frameworks. I just want to echo what Nibi was saying. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. That like the theory may exist, or like you may find something that works really well. You just have to go elsewhere and go read a lot. A lot of reading, a lot of reading, a lot of reading. So I landed on a modification to epistemological beliefs from my theoretical framework, because I'm connecting epistemological beliefs to pedagogical enactment, or how what you think about knowledge and knowing influences what you do to teach, in more straightforward terms. And I ended up on that after about a summer spent reading Hofer and Pinchurch's handbook on epistemology, and then about 24 following publications, and then a 3-month negotiation with my advisor. Is it epistemological beliefs or epistemological resources? And it kept coming back to, I didn't want to give up epistemological beliefs, so now I'm using epistemological beliefs. I claim I won the argument, but did I really? I don't know. We'll see. So it's just the, like, you go, you read, you find some things. Sometimes you find something that works for you and harmonizes with you, and you're like, I think I can understand my data through this. And then you go try it out, and if it works, great, you stick with it. Or if it doesn't quite work, like Kevin was saying, you modify it, or you ask other people, and then your advisor says something cool, and you have a reaction to that, and you go from there. More commonly, I have found that theory emerges. You find a theory that works well for your study and covers your ideas. But remember that the point of a theory, if you're not explicitly starting from the theory, is to help you contextualize and present and understand what it is you're finding or presenting. Make the theory work for you, unless you're intentionally working for the theory.
Thanks for sharing that, Duncan. Yes, we have a comment on the chat saying for the panelists to give an overview or name the framework they used as they answer the question. So I know the panelists have been doing that, but just mentioning that for other speakers that would continue to talk. So we'll move on to the next question.
If I may,
Thank you, Ife. Please go back, Animesh.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if anyone had any other thing to add.
I just wanted to say that, you know, I was so new. When I newly came into engineering education, because I had my master's in chemical engineering, and I discovered engineering education, and I never knew that it was a missing thing in my life until I found it. And so when I got into E, and by the time I came into my PhD, there was already like a bunch of data from a department that I was going to work on. And I thought, oh, just data analysis. And then it was like, oh, but you have to come up with your own research question based on this. And I was like, oh, yeah. But because everything had been laid out all for me, the IRB was already on ground. By the time I got there, the data was collected. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have this great idea. And I wrote up my the things that were going to my IRB application. And then one of my mentors was like, oh, let me share this with another person. So, you know, speaking with people and having mentors and people that can help you look over your work and just provide that guidance was very important. And I was like, oh, I have to talk about a theory. And that was what made me to now. And the person was very gracious enough to even send me some of the work that he has done on theoretical framework. And so that was how I came about my theory. And when I searched all the theories, I was like, oh, wow, these are really great things, right? They all looked very interesting and very exciting. Like, oh, you know, I wish I could just go this route. But by the time I carefully looked at what I wanted to do, I had to just pick one, and it was just a simple constructivist theory, because what I was working on was looking at developing skills and knowledge areas that chemical engineering graduates that had been decided were important for them to, when they get into their career. So the department was looking at how to incorporate those skills into the classroom. And so it was, unfortunately, I think it was the simplest theory that could go, but that was just what fit into what I was working on. And so that was what I went with.
Thank you very much, Faye. So we'll go to the next question. Thank you so much, everyone, for contribution so far. Yeah, so the next question says, did you feel any pressure to fit into an existing framework? So, we've talked about having theories, having to select theories, having to say whether there were even theories existing to speak to what we wanted. We've talked about us having novel research within engineering. And so did you feel pressured at any point to try to fit into that framework you found that seemed to be communicating something similar? Or did you carve out your own space? No, we could get insights from our other panelists who have not had a chance to talk. Thank you.
I can talk. So I kind of have two thoughts. Different manuscripts are using different theories. So I feel like one of them, I want to echo, I think what Duncan said. I kind of fell into the theory and it worked out perfectly. It was through a conversation with someone on my committee. I had done these interviews, just very exploratory, and then I was talking about kind of some of the preliminary findings, and one of my committee members suggested the Schlossberg's transition theory, which I coupled with transition typologies. And so that one just it worked and it was great. However, for one of my other manuscripts that I'm actively working on right now, I was trying to find a theory related to student agency. And I found some options, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. And I feel right now, actively, I'm kind of dealing with, I've found Clemensic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Student agency in higher education. It's a relatively new theory and it doesn't have any empirical work behind it yet. So I think that's definitely been challenging. There is an empirical work, it hasn't been used in engineering education, and trying to, convince my committee that it makes sense. I don't know if I'm fully convinced yet, but I think it makes the most sense so far. So I feel you're kind of always doing a negotiation with your advisor and your committee, and with literature in the field that has already used the theories you're interested in.
Thank you. Yes, Marcus?
Yeah, just to give a better context, the way I'm using theory, I'm in the realm of motivation theory, which is something that's widely used in engineering education. I think I would have a lot of scholars that use motivation theory, and so I feel I'm in a comfortable zone compared to my peers here who are just pushing and bringing theories that are new to the field and innovating the field to other ways to see the world, right? So the theory I'm using for my dissertation specifically is the achievement goal theory, and the way I just answering this question specifically, I did not feel pressure in any moment to use an existing framework or to. I don't think I needed to justify much to my advisor or my committee. I think it was more in terms of defining what I'm interested in. There was the experiences of early career engineering faculty, and from there your research question start to build up, right? You start getting a lot of questions, and the theory. My advisor does not even use a theory framework. He uses theory underpinning, the way that you can take parts of theories and create your own framework, right? Or you can have a theory that fits everything that you want to talk about. So I think it's more about alignment. Also, I would like to if you have questions, if you're new to engineering education or social science studies, sometimes you can use different theories to see the same data set. So theory is just a tool that you're using to justify and organize your thoughts and understand the world. But at least on my view, it should not be something that pressure or that changes what you're interested in. But I also think it's part of my worldview or the paradigm I understand theory should be in. I don't know if I answered the question, but I did not feel pressure in any moment for choosing what I want to do.
Thank you, Marcus. Would love to hear other people's thoughts on, the pressure to use a theory, not a model, the pressure to use that theory that is well known and has less criticism. My advisor once told me a theory I picked was a theory without seats. So, it's like, don't use that theory. So yeah, I would like to hear from our other panelists on that, if you have anything to chime in.
I could jump in. Here we go with another citation in the chat. But at first, I thought that acculturation was too broad of a theory for what I wanted to look at. And I proposed in my work, in my preliminary exam, I proposed looking at assimilation specifically, where you give up a part of your heritage culture to try to adjust to a new culture. And that caused a lot of questioning in my committee because they thought that I was assuming that people are doing that, right? And it was really easy for me to switch to back to acculturation because it was like assimilation is a part of acculturation. It's like under the next level umbrella. And I had to change my conceptual framework to not have assimilation theory. And so, and it wasn't like I didn't have pressure to fit because of my discipline, but it was more like my committee and was concerned that I wasn't going to find what I think I'm going to find, which is what the theories were doing. They're informing what I'm looking for. They're informing how I design my study. And they were right. I'm collecting data now, without thinking about assimilation specifically. And I'm glad that I made that change because I'm noticing that assimilation is not what's happening with a lot of the participants that I'm interviewing. And I am finding a lot about different mechanisms of acculturation that they're using for different reasons. So to answer question 2, it wasn't really a pressure to fit in my case. It was more of a pressure to explain and really truly justify why I chose a theory, and why I decided that that's the lens that I'm going to look at the data that I'm going to collect. And I was really fortunate to have a committee that helped me navigate what that would look like so that I can actually find data that represents the theories that I was proposing. So that was my case. So yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. It's interesting to, have a broad range of people talk about, while some were like got it like perfect fit, there was no necessary there was no pressure. For others, it seemed like while it wasn't necessarily pressure, it was rather getting insights from experts that helped inform the choice of theory to ensure that you don't go down a rabbit hole and not get anything from that. Do we have any other thoughts before we move on to the next question? All right.
Wait,
We'll
let me
take a-
add just
Okay,
quick. Let me
thank you,
just
Kevin.
you can move to question 3, but I'm just gonna add. Yes, I was frustrated during that time because I had put so much work into reading this theory and I was convinced myself that it was the right one, but it was not. So it's a moment of like, oh no, they know what's best for me, so I gotta figure this out emotionally too. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing
While
that, Kevin.
while Deborah is moving to the next slide, I just want to echo Kevin. Like, frustration is a very normal emotion for the course of it. Sometimes you get the theory right, sometimes you have to squish it and modify it, and sometimes you discover, like, you don't discover that your theory needs to change before you do the study, like Kevin was saying, like he changed it before he did the study. Great. Sometimes you don't discover that until you're doing the analysis and the data, and then your theory needs to change. Remember, one thing that my advisor told me is remember that, like, only you and your committee will see the internal process. Everyone else just sees the final thing you report. So unless you tell people I changed my theory 5 times, no one outside your committee knows that you changed your theory 5 times. They just see you used this theory for this data. And if that works, it works, great. But also, when I say change theory 5 times, that involves 5 cycles of that read and find and decide and read, and that is beyond frustrating. But it's fun, I think.
Thanks for sharing, Duncan. Do we have any other chime in?
Just a quick thought, as Duncan shared about the pressure. I remember like pitching a totally different theory when I was doing my comps. I was still like thinking about critical cas theory, but I was thinking it to complement it with community cultural wealth. And that was what I was pitching during my comps, and it did not, like, my committee pushed me to think like, why CCW, why this, like you're thinking this, like community cultural. And believe me, I read so much of community cultural wealth, critical race theory, history of community cultural wealth. I attended all the talks wherever YOSO went, and I think like at that time OSU hosted YOSO for a talk. I went to that. I would just be there, like anyone talking about CCW, I would be there. And I was so very like frustrated when it did not really fit, because I am again going back to the question one, there was a prompt about like personal values and belief systems, right? So as I am from a dominant caste background, and community cultural wealth is not designed to study or think about a dominant identity, right? So then it was a lot of clash for myself. Like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing by using this theory, by thinking about this theory? Should I like go forward? It was a lot of frustration. I spent like, between my comms and my proposal defense, there was a lot of things going on with myself, with just the fights in myself. Like, what should I be studying? Am I in this position to study or talk about the lower caste Dalit people or outcast Dalit people at this moment? Like, if I am studying, then what am I studying? Who can I talk to? Who can I be writing from? Like, what perspective should I be writing from? Is it fair? And so then all these like personal beliefs and epistemological stances come into that spiral and that rabbit hole of your thinking. And it was a lot of frustrating moments for me, but I think like it is a good type of frustrations that you have, right? Like, it is not like I'm fighting with my committee, but I am fighting with my own thoughts, my own thinking. And it is all good because I am reading extensively. I'm reading the background of it. I want to do justice by whatever theory that I choose. And that is how, like, when I said it clicked for me, because it just clicked. Colorblind racism just clicked for me, like in one semester. And then I wrote my proposal in like one semester, and then I defended it. So that happened. So yeah, like sitting with the 90% of this PhD is doctorate in philosophy, right? Like, we have to philosophize a lot. That means we have to think a lot. And it did not happen like overnight. A lot of people have thought a lot more over these years. So we are just adding to that. We are borrowing it, and we are thinking it, how it fits within our study, within our context. And we are philosophizing in that little stream. Maybe in 10 years, in 15 years, we could all become like Yosos and anyone, right? So that is one thing to keep in your mind. Like, you don't have to fit. You just have to be ready to defend, be confident enough to defend why I chose this. Now I know I made the right decision by not choosing CCW. I'm very, very clear on that. So that clarity just for myself.
Thank you so much for sharing, Nivi. Yeah, we'll go to our third question. Yes, so thank you for sharing your insights so far. So the question says, what advice do you have for someone who feels overwhelmed by the theoretical readings and frameworks? You know, we've mentioned a lot of reading, extensive reaching out to people. So what advice do you have for someone who feels so overwhelmed by all of this, based on what has worked for you or what has worked for people you know?
So I'm just gonna, oh, no, go ahead, Marcus.
Thank you, Duncan. Sorry. I think the first thing is that it's a learning process, right? Even the faculty or advisors itself, we are all learning about it. Don't feel you need to know everything. Don't feel you need to know all the theories that are there, because no one knows. We are all learning. It's a learning process. It's a learning journey. We see many scholars in the field just changing theories or the types of theories they use through their journey. I think it's the first advice I have. The second one is reflect on reflect on your positionality. I think it's a point like it's important understanding what your position in terms of the research you're doing, how you're viewing that. I think there's a paper that's really shared in our field that I think is Sakiel's paper. I can share the link here later. The third thing is as engineering education, I would say engineering education as a field compared to other fields in social sciences or engineering, it's still a new field, or I would say a teenager field. Or we are starting to transition from getting pieces of theories from other places that to try to fit what you want, to start to develop, or thank you, Kevin, to try to start to develop our own theories in engineering education itself. So I also would like to um, share with you all that maybe what you want to study, there's no theory that fits exactly what you want, and you can start thinking about other research methods such as grounding theory, and the opportunity to contribute to the field instead of with some practical implications with a theoretical new theoretical framework that will help others research to advance the field. So I think this is my main advice is and always talk to people. I think our field is so good to be welcoming to anyone. I've never emailed or tried to invite somebody for a talk in a conference or virtually, and this person just shut the door for me. Our field is really open to conversation. If you find something that you are interested in, email this faculty, email a colleague, a peer, and I'm pretty sure they will take 1 hour, 2 hours to talk to you, whatever you want to talk. So I think it's the three advices I have.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, that was awesome. I would say, like, my advice is that's very normal to feel overwhelmed by theory. It's very, very normal. I would have two pieces of advice. One, don't look for the perfect theory, look for an effective theory. Does it work? Great, stop. You use it until it stops working if you're happy. If you're not happy, keep looking, look adjacent. But the third one is like, if you don't know where to start where you can. Like, you're thinking about something for some reason, start there, go from there, follow the, I call it the reference rabbit hole. You read a paper, you see a reference, it's cool. You go read that paper, you find its references, it's cool. And now you've downloaded 15 papers and read 7 of them, and that's not what you planned on doing today. That's a very normal day, especially your first 2 years. You will do a lot of reading and a lot of thinking. Just keep going. If you don't even know where to start, ask people, like Marcus was saying. Like, I have these thoughts, help. Like, that's what your advisor and your committee and your mentors are there for. I have these thoughts and I don't know where to go from it. It's so hard to find a research paper if you don't know the keywords for it. But once you find the keywords, it's magical. But how are you going to find the keywords if you don't ask or look or read? Yeah, so just all of that, like it's going to be overwhelming. Find ways through it. You're really like you're trying not to drown your first couple of years of grad school. You're just drinking from a fire hose. There's so much information coming at you so fast. Yeah, you're making it through and you chose a theory and it kind of works. Great. Don't change it until you feel you need to or someone tells you you need to. Good enough is good enough.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, I'd like to ask a follow-up question to that, shared for something Duncan said on, change it when it stops working, keep using it in as much as it's working. So how do I know it's working?
Are you able to build convincing arguments? Can you use your data as evidence under your theory to convince someone else and explain your data effectively and quickly? And do I have a good metric for effectively and quickly? No. Usually it's my advisor will push back on me when I'm making claims in analytic memos. And if I can't defend myself well, that memo is not done, that analysis is not complete. It's time to like, is that me not doing enough? Is the data not clear enough? Or is the theory not working well enough? And so if I give it more time and I'm still not able to build a convincing defense, okay, something needs to change. I need to go back and work. Chloe, I see your question in the chat. A favorite research tool for the rabbit hole. I frequently will use either a database like Scopus or Engineering Village that your university has an access to, or my favorite thing actually is Google Scholar. I'll go in and I'll type the paper I'm reading and I'll see who's cited this paper, especially if it's more than 10 years old, because then you can see like the literature database that's emerged from the paper that you're looking at.
Thank you so much, Duncan. Do we have any other person that wants to chime in?
I would like
Thank
to
you.
add to that another thing is the librarians. They can be very helpful. I have had to kind of sometimes just when I've typed in all the keywords, I've tried everything. The librarians, they just know where to go to. So you could also use them as a resource.
Thank you so much.
I would quickly like to take on this moment to talk about something that I have did for my comprehensive exam. In my head, I was thinking of that was creative, but I'm also adding the citations in here. Feel free to, like these are not citations, this is just like the methodologist or the researcher that kind of talked about it. So I think like my theoretical question was one of the very big questions that I've gotten and seen in my whole life ever. And it had like so many different tales to it. It was asking me about what are 3 different theories that you would like to use, or maybe talk about your theories that you would want to connect with, which has different characteristics. And I kind of went through that in a way using Litmaps connected papers. I can type them down as well. So it kind of touches on what Chloe was asking about, how do you find them? So what this tool does is they take a paper and then connect it back to where it was cited and how it was cited. It's more so like forward citation and also backward citation. And you can see how each of these theories are talked about. And there is another thing called citation context analysis. Maybe this, I was able to find some of those paper that talks about my theory. And as Nivi said, and Olivia said, I was looking at CCW and transition theory. And my first document, I kind of remember looking at them together through the lens of these 3, wait, where is it? These 3 theory framework that kind of tells you how to evaluate your theory. So I brought in these 3 people to talk about my theory and evaluated them based on like how it fits. So that was kind of like my whole theory paper on my comprehensive exam, which was very interesting. And these are like very old citations, and I explored them through my higher ed classes, I believe, like student affairs, counseling, education, something. But those were very helpful. Just wanted to add it out there.
Thank you so much, Animesh, for that contribution.
Oh, I'm gonna
Would-
add
If
to.
I may,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
We'll take Kevin, then
Go
we'll
ahead.
take Ife.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm gonna add to something that Marcus said earlier. He talked a little bit about grounded theory. And grounded theory is in again theory. In theory, great. However, caution, word of caution to anyone wanting to pursue grounded theory. Grounded theory requires saturation, and saturation doesn't have a prescribed timeline. So please, if you're going to do grounded theory, I would not recommend it for a dissertation. That's information, that recommendation has been passed down to me from my advisor and my entire committee because I was going to do a grounded theory. Since studying colonial migrants is so new in the field, it merits a new theory. But because of that, because I wanted to do a dissertation within a specific timeline, grounded theory was a no-go. And so I switched to phenomenology, which still conserves still conserves a lot of philosophical foundation. So I had to go deep into philosophy to be able to understand how to do a phenomenology, what it means to define a phenomena, um, and and these are methods. These are not theories anymore, right? But it all talks to each other. So, oh, cool. Duncan's doing phenomenology too. But so yeah, just word of caution, developing a theory through grounded theory is ideally nice, but it is to do a really good grounded theory is a really, really difficult lift. So just want to throw that out there. So go ahead, Ipe.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, Ife.
Thank you,
Oh,
Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the last part of that question. Did you find community helpful? Yes, and yes, and yes. That was I had to look for a community to kind of like, introduce me into the engineering education and just finding the people that and not to make not to make this seem very, but people that looked like me that were doing this was very, very important for me because not only can they help me, can I feel confident that okay, they could kind of share my my frustration because we would have kind of like the same background. We're new to this also, but they are at a higher level of understanding and their experience to now. So I was able to find an African community of African graduate students that were also in engineering education, and we would meet. I could bounce off my theory or my data, like what do you think this is all about? And that was very, very helpful for me to arrive at a very comfortable point of using my theory for my research.
Thank you so much, Ife. So would like to open it up now for people on the call to ask the questions. You could drop it in the chat or you could unmute and share your questions with the audience, with the panelists, sorry.
I guess I could ask a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, like I mentioned in the chat, this is just a fascinating panel and just amazing discussions all around. I wanted to touch base on that very point that Kevin mentioned. I know I sort of was joking about it in the chat, but I really meant it because even when I was a grad student, it was the very same thing I heard. Do not even think about grounded theory. Except you want to spend your lifetime here, do not do it. But at the same time, we're hoping to contribute something new and novel to the field. So I guess I wonder, is it a question of if you are able to find out what your topic is early on, like maybe in your first year, maybe you have 4 years now to do grounded theory. I don't know. Is there a
I
need? Yeah.
I just answered the question in the chat.
Oh yeah.
So like the main difference between a phenomenon, like what makes a phenomenology much more manageable, is that you don't have the requirement of increasing your sample size indefinitely. So for phenomenology, if you're going to interview 10 participants, you are going to interview 10 participants. And then you take your data and then you analyze it many times, but you don't increase the 10 participants for phenomenology. However, for grounded theory, you must analyze the data and increase sample size until you see that your participants all start repeating the same things. So that's what makes that's why it's if you're going to do a true grounded theory, you literally run into the idea of like, have you reached saturation, which only means that you see the same participants saying the same kinds of things over and over, but you have to keep increasing your sample size if a new thing comes up where something is not starting to repeat itself. Does that make sense? And do other people on the panel also want to add to that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
quickly.
go ahead, Nivi.
Oh, just quickly, I also considered grounded theory at some point because I was again looking at caste blindness, and color blindness already sort of had a sort of like a framework with like abstract liberalism, and then like there are 4 different tenets within color blindness itself. So, and then I was like, maybe I'm looking at grounded theory because caste blindness might also have some of these tenets. But then I was like, maybe it is not a grounded theory because there is already a theory, but like from a different point of view, right? Like from the point of like critical race theory, there is already something that exists. And so I was like, so maybe I will try thinking. I do want to establish or do want to have a theoretical contribution through my dissertation. And so what I did was, because the theoretical framing itself is missing from the major caste conversation. And so I was like, what can I do or contribute to this critical caste scholars and academicians who are talking about this? What can I talk to them about? How can I tell them what I found in my dissertation study that could be helpful for them? And so I landed up with I'm trying to use constant comparative analysis also inbuilt in my analytical framework. So I'm using a combination of critical discourse analysis and constant comparison analysis as I am like trying to map. I don't want to say map, or sort of like bring together the frameworks that is already established by Bonilla Silva, but also I'm looking at a different system of oppression that is called caste. And so there might be different things that is coming out of my data. And so I was like, maybe I will use it and see where it goes. But I am still not there yet because I am currently like doing discourse analysis of my interview data so far. And so once I enter the constant comparison analysis is when I got a lot of questions around saturation. So then like, how do I know it is saturated, right? So that is something I kept in my mind as I was interviewing my participants, like kept noticing for those things. Am I seeing repeated patterns? Like as soon as I would interview my participants, I would write a reflective memo and see like how it is helpful, how is it different from the theory that is already existing, is different from my conceptual framework. And that slowly like really gave me insight into when I was like halfway through my interview collection. I was like, this is not working out because I want to increase the time, because 1 hour was not enough for me to interview the participants. It was like putting an F, like it was just not right. So I was like, it helped me check in with myself through halfway, and then I increased it to national sample, and then people started signing up for my interviews, and then yeah, so I was able to keep account, like though I have not done it by book, I still have reflective memos and analytical memos written in that I could go back to when I am thinking about constant comparison analysis. So I'm not leaving it alone, leaving it on the side and not caring about it, but I also have some evidences that, oh, this is enough number of participants, like I'm not seeing anything new right here, and this is enough for the other thing that we also have to think about is, what is this research, like what is dissertation, what does this dissertation mean to us, and when do I stop? Dissertation is one thing, your research agenda is one thing, because your research agenda continues even beyond your dissertation. So then, like, how do I build those skills for developing my research agenda versus where do I say this is a done dissertation, like I am done, I'm defending, and then I'm moving on. So now I can choose, like I can choose not to do the constant comparison analysis in my dissertation, but I could continue doing it later. So just building those skills along the way, like having an eye out for what kind of analytical framing that you want to choose and look at, and what does that look like, is very like finding your conceptual framework is as important as finding your analytical framework. So I would say they both go hand in hand. Even without the data, you should be able to see what can the data give me, like what kind of prompts I'm using. So then what kind of data I am expecting from my participants? How do I keep them bringing me those things? And note those biases in your prompts as well. Like as you are listening to your recordings, note those things, like, yeah, here I really probed that participant to, like, think about this because I was not getting it. And that is how you can, like, be transparent and make sure that your data and your findings is trustworthy. Because I come from a qualitative background, I use the word trustworthiness, and a lot of transparency is important in this work. Go ahead, Duncan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Duncan.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say, so go ahead and move on.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for responding to the questions. Thank you for taking our time to share your insights with us and share your wealth of knowledge with us. So, being respectful of our time, this session is supposed to end by 4 p.m. on the dot, but then I'll take any final comments from us, and then Animesh could go to the last slide, where we encourage you to please reach out to our panelists with any questions. They are sure to respond to your emails. We have their emails up here on the screen, and I'll take any final comments from the panelists, like that's one highlight you want us to go home with, even if we do not remember most of what was discussed, and we'll close out the session. Thank you very much.
Shameless plug? Can I shameless plug?
Say that again.
Shameless plug. I'm recruiting participants for a dissertation. I'll just send that in the Discord so everyone can see it.
Please share that with us. So if we're eligible, we could assist with your study. Thank you very much.
Just quickly, one final thing that I wanted to share, because I took so many notes based on your prompts, and I just wanted to say one final thing is the feedback, like testing out your ideas and getting the feedback. Getting the feedback is okay, but then what do we do with it is more important. How do we sit with it? How do we take it? And there will be stuck points, like between reading, thinking, writing, getting feedback. We are stuck in the cycle. We will be stuck somewhere. And so just knowing yourself, like, see where you're stuck. What does that stuck point mean? Are you stuck with the feedback? You don't know where to go? Then go ask the person who gave you the feedback. Where do I go? What do I do with this feedback? If you don't know about the topic, go read on it. If you are done reading, write it. Writing and thinking goes hand in hand. So write it, then send it for feedback, get more. So so feedback is a cycle. Feedback, reading, writing is a cycle. So I would definitely share that, like, be open to sharing, be open to criticisms. Criticisms is not necessarily a bad thing. It is a really, really good thing. It means someone really cares about your work and cares about you. And it means your work is important and you're making some strides. So sit with those criticism. It's okay. Have a tub of ice cream as soon as you get the feedback. But then after that tub of ice cream, put your effort in, put your 200% in, and then work on it, and then make genuine progress. And yeah, in 4 years, look at me. I have an impressive resume right now and CV, and see, people are inviting me on a panel to talk about it. So and that is how we get here. And keep going. There will always be stuck points, but just keep going at it. Do the things that you know. If not, just ask someone.
Thank you so much.
I just want to
Yeah.
thank each and everyone
Thank
in the
you.
panel and share their email IDs here. Technology giving up on me again. Okay. But I had their okay, here it is. Sorry. But thank you everyone for joining us, and it was such an insightful conversation. I really enjoyed it, and we are going to come again in next couple of weeks with another panel like this. So, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all for inviting me. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.